like if you're not convinced by my video, then you're a child molester. Can you just explain to me whether you're a pedophile or not? The way to avoid being passive aggressive is to be aggressive. I know it's sensationalized, but I literally think that he operates exactly like a child molester. Okay, so yeah, Wicked Supreme. What do you?
Yeah. So Wicked Supreme, what's going on there? Like, what's your I don't want to say like issue or something, but what's the conflict or situation?
I find him endlessly evasive
Mm-hmm.
while claiming he is not being evasive or that I am being evasive.
Okay. Can you tell me to the best where that comes from?
He said I was cornering him
Mm-hmm.
with debate tactics, and there's something else. But I basically like paraphrased his criticisms of me like as criticisms, and he was like, no, those weren't like he refused to take like an aggressive stance. I guess it was like any paraphrasing on my end was taken as an unfair, like it felt like we were in a conflict. But anytime I tried to say like, okay, so you think this bad thing about me, and he was like, well, I never said it was bad. And it was like, Jesus fucking Christ, it's fine, just say that you think something. Like I was like, I couldn't get a foothold. It was like we were having a fight, but like, which is fine. Like I can have like a civil a civil conflict where someone is giving me negative feedback. That's fine with me. That I can stand. I'm trying to think of somebody I've talked to who would be more direct about that, or who has been, but who I have like fought with.
Mm-hmm.
But
So it's like you felt like when you were trying to describe his points, he was intentionally or maybe unintentionally, but he was directly communicating to you that you were misrepresenting your his points when it felt like you were doing kind of like a very general review and revision and not something that was hyper specific, and it felt like he took like a hyper specific approach to it.
yes, it feels like anytime I try to say, okay, so this is what I think, this is what you think, like I'm here and you're there, he would just escape. And like I really really don't like passive aggressiveness. I really need open conflict. So
Okay.
like with Shaylin, like if Shaylin says, like has like a tone, like a passive aggressive tone, or she's like refusing to look at me or something,
Hmm.
I'm like, just call me a fucking idiot. Just anything. Just look at me and say whatever the problem is. I don't care how mean it is. Like, just say it, and then at least we have something like we can talk about. And I feel like both Wicked Supreme and Booksmarts are not so likely to be direct, but it's like I get what you're fucking, I can tell what you're saying. And like I understand that their problem with me is that I always think I can tell what the other person is thinking or saying or
Hmm.
feeling. And so it's a pretty bad match.
Yeah, that is a pretty bad match because so for one, I mean in honesty, and I mean I'm sure you, because you said you watch my stuff, you know, that I'm pretty in line with like that belief that it feels like very often you will believe that you understand where somebody is coming from and stuff like that, and I think potentially at the detriment, right? That's why I think that the book smarts conversation um uh went down the shitter at the time that it did.
Okay, but you
That was
can,
my. Mhm.
do you think what you just said to me is a pretty direct
Yeah,
criticism, right?
I would say so.
I think it would be very hard to get Book Smarts or Wicked Supreme to say what you just said to me directly. Oh, and the
Um,
other thing is they'll be hypercritical about, particularly Wicked Supreme will be hypercritical of me when he's talking about me.
hmm.
But then when he's talking to me, he's like, his version of like ultra charitability, which I think is what he's trying to do, just comes off as incredibly passive aggressive to me and drives me fucking insane.
Ultra charitability. So, like, for me, in my experience, Yeah, this is a very interesting situation here because one of the like main things that me and Wicked Supreme had really connected over as professionally at the time was the avoiding being passive aggressive. So I almost want to like re-go over like the talk. Was it just one talk that you and Wicked Supreme had, or?
Yes. In his the way to avoid being passive aggressive is to be aggressive.
Uh,
You
I
can't
th-
you can't just take all of your anger and like just and aggressiveness and just like put it in a suitcase. That the
yeah.
attempt to do that is what makes people passive aggressive. So I would think that if Wicked Supreme wants to be less passive aggressive, he would need to make a conscious effort to be more regular aggressive.
So yeah, the issue that I think there, and the only like pushback I would give is I feel like very often Wicked Supreme doesn't feel like he, or at least sorry, it's from based on what I've and the conversations that I've had with him, both public and private, it just doesn't seem like he usually gets very actually like mad or angry.
I
And
think he
so
doesn't
he
know when he's mad.
maybe. But at least from when I've talked to him, that seems to be the vibe. And with that being the case, I feel like what would probably be more likely is that he is communicating to you passive aggressiveness where he either may not be feeling that he actually is being aggressive, or that he feels like he's communicating like trying to be precise
I think
in
this motherfucker can't
sunshine.
stand me.
I don't think he likes you. I
I
think
think
that
I
much
get
is
under his
certain.
skin. It's beyond not like I think I am like infuriating to him.
Mm. Um,
And I don't think he is very good at expressing anger or very comfortable with it. And I think that the more I point out that's happening, the more annoying I am to him, and it's like snowballing. I mean, we had like a long talk in DMs after our conversation, and it was like everything I said. Just like he asked me like a bunch of questions about like what I thought of our conversation and like what my views were on it, and I was answering his questions, and it just seemed like everything I said pissed him off more. And I eventually was like, it just seems like you're mad and won't admit it. And he was like, well, then how do you know that I'm mad? That's kind of what derailed the conversation. I think that was near the end of the conversation where I was just like, it just seems like you hate me, but won't just say it. Like if you just openly hated me, that I can work with. I
hmm
can, I can, I can. I'm okay with somebody who's just like can't stand me and can admit it. But yeah, passive aggressiveness just drives me fucking crazy.
I agree that I agree with you on passive aggressiveness driving you crazy. It drives me personally like I wouldn't say it drives me crazy. I would say I have a very strong dislike for it. Very strong. I essentially I just don't really engage with you if you're passive aggressive is how I do it. If you're going to be passive aggressive, I'm just going to like never talk to you. Um because I just don't think that's a good way of handling problems. But from it's just my thought process in this situation is I mean I haven't seen your DMs, I haven't seen any of that. I want to re-go over the conversation with this
Yeah,
being your read over it before I make any definitive conclusions, but I feel like it could be very, or rather let me ask it this way: do you think it is reasonable to assume that maybe there is just strong miscommunication, or maybe
no,
that he what
I. It's not like a tactic or an act. I genuinely believe that I can tell what Wicked Supreme is feeling, as plain as day. The same way I can tell that you're wearing glasses right now. So
okay.
I don't think they're like it's possible that I'm hallucinating, but my experience of it is like, and I know that you have a problem with me like the way I say this, and I maybe I need to make this clear when I say things like this. My like lived experience as a gay man is that I know what Wicked Supreme is feeling when I'm talking to him. The same way I know that like this is my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying that to try to convince him that I know. Like I know you have a problem with the way I present this and a lot of different like arguments. I'm not trying to convince you that I'm right when I say that. I'm trying to convince you of how right I think I am.
Yeah. Okay.
You get what I'm saying?
Well,
So it's like,
hmm
I'm not saying you should agree with me just because I'm so sure. I'm not using that as
yeah.
an argument. I'm saying you'll understand why I'm saying what I'm saying better if you understand that, like, to me, it's as plain as day that this motherfucker hates me and he's like furious at me. And
Yeah.
so,
I
like, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I have no issue with your use of language there. What I would take issue with is your ability, your confidence in your feelings in that situation. Like, how on a scale or like on a percent from 0 to 100, how confident are you that you are correct?
About how Wicked Supreme is feeling when I am talking to him.
Yeah, and that there isn't like when he's being more specifically, when you believe he's being passive aggressive, maybe he's just not communicating in a way that like meshes with you, or maybe he's just straight up just not communicating properly, but not actually angry, but just like mistyping and not communicating in an appropriate manner to you.
100%.
So you're 100% confident that he is angry and that it isn't a mistype or any of that?
Yes.
Like I'd say that is probably where my original issue with the book smarts and then this situation comes in is your certainty in your reads on people.
Do you, okay. We agree that I don't have any control over my own certainty, right?
Um
That's just an experiential
maybe
thing.
oh then maybe we're talking about some two different things here then.
Well, how
Uh
confident are you that you're wearing glasses right now?
I would say I'm 100% confident that I'm wearing glasses right now.
Right. And so, what if I was like, doesn't that seem a little high?
Well, I mean,
Like, if I was like, I have an issue with that, you should lower
mhm,
your confidence level there. You can't. There's
mhm.
nothing you could do internally to lower your confidence level that you're wearing glasses, right?
I mean, generally, yeah, besides like going insane, yeah.
Right. Okay.
And
So that's where I'm at. I can't control my experience of my own confidence level. I could control how I present it though. I could misrepresent my confidence level and I could say, "Well, yeah, that but then that's what Wicked Supreme does. That's what fucking drives me. That's the specific thing that drives me insane. When he has a strong conviction in the interest of charitability, he'll say, "Well, that's how I saw it, but who knows? Maybe it's not true." And I'm like, I know that you think this. So just say that you think it. That's what I don't want to do. So maybe there's a way I can present it where I'm like, I'm 100% confident, but I can be 100% confident and still be wrong. That doesn't mean that you should agree with me.
sure, sure. I'm not like I said, I don't think my issue is like you're trying to convince people that you're correct for this or that. My issue is primarily with the confidence level, and maybe there is going to be a disagreement here on the ability to change confidence levels. So, like for instance, this is going to be a bit of an extreme, but if you would just hold my, take my hand through this one here. What if I said to you that Wicked Supreme had a severe social disorder that enabled him to type things or do things that were severely out of what we would consider the norm? Then would you second guess your confidence and him actually being angry?
I would probably think you were wrong, but let's assume you're presenting it in some way
Yeah.
that convinces me that
hmm
you're not wrong. Then yeah, that
Okay.
would certainly shake my. I would. You'd probably knock me down. Oh, so like people telling me Vosh is autistic.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think that was a. I don't think that's like. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe you'll get into it. I don't think like that's any argument for anything that he's done. He hasn't seemed
it,
to.
it it reframed my understanding of why he was reading me the way that he is. It didn't make me feel completely
Okay.
different about the conversation, but it did make me feel differently. That I'm
Okay.
assuming he's reacting to some more one, I'm asking him to kind of trust me on some subtler cues that
Mm-hmm.
he may not feel confident that he can trust those subtle cues, and he may just need like he's basically saying, like, can you, in a way you could read our conversation as him being like, can you just explain to me whether you're a pedophile or not? And when I
Yeah.
refuse to do that, maybe at a certain point he's like, well, if I'm being expected to get to detect whether you're a pedophile based on your subtle social cues, I don't know what's happening, so like I'm out of here. Like I'm not gonna risk being going into this blind, and if the only way you're willing to communicate with me is in a way that I intrinsically don't understand, then like I'm out of the call. And that makes
Hmm.
more sense to me than like like the assumption that he knows I'm more good faith than he was letting on, and he didn't want to talk about it and felt himself getting cornered somehow. That was my initial read, but now I'm more knowing that about him. I'm more open to a more possibilities about it.
Okay. Um, so in the case then of Wicked Supreme, the point of me using that extreme, which to my knowledge is not the case for
Yeah.
Wicked Supreme, um, the reason I use that is to kind of show like at least the thought process that I have for this, which is typically not that extreme, but just it's along the spectrum there of that, which is like I believe with confidence somebody is doing X, right? From my own perspective. But I think there are very reasonable things that could be the case that would make it so that way what I am coming to the conclusion of isn't the case, right? And so this is, for instance, why I personally don't call like Hassan a grifter and stuff like this, is because I think, well, a lot of his actions or stuff may be in line with that. There is reasonable things that he could be doing out of ignorance that could easily bring him to the conclusions that he's at. And so I then I drop it because I think I need a higher confidence level in that claim to be sufficient for it. So I'm just wondering because when you make the claims that you do, like or that you have rather about like book smarts and like Wicked Supreme, I feel like
Wait
the
a second.
amount
Wait a
of
second.
yep,
I want to be clear. I am making a claim about my own experience
sure,
during
yeah,
the conversation.
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Well, I feel like the conflation of those two might be leading to some of the issues here. Where
Um,
if I say, I
mhm,
think you're lying,
mhm.
I want that to be treated differently from you're a liar.
You are a liar. Yeah, I
Right.
agree, and I
Okay.
misspoke.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
Okay,
Go ahead.
because
Continue.
so so it is entirely internal. I believe in my instance, what I was referring to is entirely internal as well.
Okay.
There is
Okay.
I the things that I can say with 100% certainty are very very slim. There, that's pretty much just like we were talking about with the glasses and stuff like that. If we're talking about stuff that like other people are feeling and things like that, it's just in my experience that it's very often that I feel like somebody might be feeling something, but there's a reasonable reason why they might not. And then it turns out that they're not. Now,
Hmm.
maybe you could just say that, like, I'm just bad at reading people. That's definitely something that could be the case. But I feel like it's often that you will state things about the way that you feel in regards to somebody's emotional state.
Hmm.
And I feel like you're operating with such little information that it feels unreasonable for me to me for you to make that kind of a or for you to come to that kind of conclusion in
Right. So
your
you
own
the unreasonable part
experiential
is
way.
my is okay. So you're suggesting that I take a precautionary step of somehow warning myself to be less sure,
Yeah, so it's
or
like
maybe waiting longer before I say it out loud.
yeah, I don't really it's the saying out loud bit isn't really so much what I care about. So, well, kind of. That's it kind of is. But I it's
Okay. I think Wicked Supreme also is pretty fucking sure of his convictions about other people. I think he just doesn't say them
sure.
out loud.
Okay. I mean, again, the sureness of conviction really isn't the issue. It's the amount of information in the sureness of conviction, right?
Sure.
It's just this is so I'm just letting you know this is from my experience. I'm not trying to make like super hard claim here, but from my experience, it just feels
Yeah.
like when you're, especially in the book smarts one, I felt like was really apparent for me when you said some of the things that you said about book smarts. From my personal point of view, I didn't understand how you could feel so confident in the claims that you made with such little information. That was sorry the claim sorry the your claims of your own emotions, like you think this person is doing X with the information that you have. It just felt insufficient to be able to make such an information such a like a thing. It felt like after one conversation, you were like, this guy's this way. I know he is this way in your own mind. And it's
Yeah.
like, I feel like you need more than that before you come to conclusions, hard conclusions about people. That was my main issue with you early on.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a way that I'm going to be able to be like this can be like resolved like especially in like one
Even if I
conversation
agree with
or
you, I
without,
don't know that there's a
yeah,
way it can be
yeah,
resolved because
exactly.
it's just like
A
what I am.
feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's just a feeling.
Hmm.
Um, but
And
yeah, I
it's
mean, I
like, how would
definitely.
I even describe to you the amount, like, even if you were fully receptive, how would I describe to you the amount of information that I would agree is acceptable to then come to those conclusions? Because I think me and you can both agree there's a time where you can go with 100% conviction. Yeah, that person's X, right? Um, it like with 100% conviction, I can probably say that like somebody is like emotionally uh invested in uh I don't know, their work or something like that, right? Like this person is driven or this person is like, you
Yeah.
know, yeah, and stuff like that. And
Well,
it's like,
also, I think some of my convictions are also about more ephemeral moments, like a feeling that Wicked Supreme can't stand me. Not that he'll never be able to stand me, and not that he is going to hate me forever, but that it just feels like that in the moment, like that's the interaction we're having, or a conviction about like anger is like a physiological experience.
yeah.
So it's like
Hmm.
it's not that he and then some second order conclusions from that. But like I'd say the central thing is like, oh, I'm very convinced that you're angry at me right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. And like, to that effect, it's also really difficult because that's an incredibly useful thing to have is to have sureness in somebody's emotional state, because if we have no sureness in anybody's emotional state, we can't really navigate conversations well. Like if I'm never sure if you're really angry, then I won't be able to respond in a way that might, for instance, lower the temperature of the room, and like I might be
Mm-hmm.
able to resolve that. So yeah, it's there's no real easy way for like that to be resolved. I'm just like that's the interpretation that I got, especially after the book smarts conversation. That was one of my first major critiques with you.
I understand.
Fantastic. Would you
Um,
unless you have more to say, would you want to talk about Dr. K in your
yeah,
video?
let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um. All right. So I have quite a bit of critique for your video,
Yeah,
of your video.
I fucking
Um,
noticed.
yeah. So your video, from my perspective, it didn't do what I wanted it to for the average person. Can you tell me what was who was your target audience and what was the effect you were going for in that video?
Um, I came to so I started filming myself reacting to all of the Recful sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I have like 12 hours of footage of myself screaming at the screen while Dr. K.
Was this live?
No,
Oh,
I
okay.
just filmed it. I just filmed it myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very raw, very emotional. Will come across as very unhinged, I'm sure. That at me inserting myself into these therapy sessions and screaming about this person I never met or never knew existed until a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that said, I think that my critiques are pretty valid and like a line by Doctor, as you noticed, I watched you
Mm-hmm.
watch his response video. A line by line critique of Dr. K and the way he communicates is pretty valid because um, it is not obvious at first blush the things he is doing when he is talking. He's very slippery and will work a lot of things in there where you're like, almost like I'm transcribing some of their conversations now for my complaint addendum to the medical board,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm
An
typing and
addendum. Ooh.
yeah, my first complaint I kind of like was just focused on like the failure to establish the doctor patient relationship. But
Yeah.
based on Crudy's response to like a Q&A in the Healthy Gamer Discord, it made it seem like she thinks she can clear their name by releasing some DMs to the medical board. And so then I was like, okay, you guys are, I kind of thought the medical board was going to investigate this.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm realizing now they're not really an investigative body. They're more like, we'll look through the complaint and then kind of
Mm-hmm.
clear it. And once the complaint is cleared, we're good. So just because I included like a link to all like the playlist, they're not going to go digging through the playlist and looking for like what the fuck is it you're doing here.
I
So
see.
I realized I have to send that material to them and like get it in front of their face. So
Mm-hmm.
I have like it's probably like a 10 pages of moments that I've transcribed. And like as I'm transcribing them, I'm even me, like having watched this stuff a bunch of times, I'm typing out the shit he's saying. And like when you see it written down, you're like, Jesus, did he really fucking say that? It's weird. It's
Mm-hmm.
like the experience of listening to him is not at all the same experience as the experience of seeing what he said actually written down. It's really weird. So
Mm-hmm.
while I think that would be valuable, it also became clear to me that I realized over the course of a few weeks that nobody seems generally the lay people don't seem to understand medical ethics or specifically therapy ethics.
Certainly, yeah.
Like yeah, and like so to me, like having been raised around psychologists and getting a bachelor's and having friends who are therapists and everything, to me, if you say, "Oh, I started having lunch or I went to see a movie with my client,"
Mm-hmm.
I'm like red alarms flashing, like what, like you did what?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and to most people, um, that would be like, oh, that's a little weird, but you know, it's probably okay. And so it became clear to me that the video doesn't have to so much convince them that Dr. K did what he did. It almost more so has to convince them of like where the line should be. So if people think Dr. K is here and the line is like here,
Mm-hmm.
and like he's kind of close to it, I realize that the bigger misconception among lay people or Dr. K's like fans for sure is that the line is actually like here. And
Mm-hmm.
so whether he's here or here doesn't is not of so much importance. Once you establish that the line is here, it's like pretty inarguable that he crossed it. And
Yeah.
right. So what I was afraid was going to happen is that the medical board is going to act harshly, um, either with a reprimand or, as I am hoping, revoking his license, and that will call into the question, why? Well, then why is the line there? And he already subtly is kind of nibbling away at his audience's faith in medical ethics
Mm-hmm.
by saying things like, you know, this is a new innovative treatment they wouldn't understand. Who's going to come help you? No one's going to help you but me. Um, basically just giving them the impression that like I understand gamers because I'm a gamer, and like there's just the idea that like you need a therapist who is a gamer if you're a gamer. If you're a streamer, you need a therapist who's a streamer, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't make any fucking that completely very subtly undermines the whole idea of what therapy is. Um So I decided that my video should be more of a educational piece about therapy ethics, using Dr. K as an example, and just lay down the foundations and then let you decide if you think he's crossing the line and how.
Yeah, so I wanted to I'll roll back to the original question because I don't feel like I had the precise answer that I was looking for the target audience and
Okay.
with
Oh,
that.
the
But
target
like,
audience. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So the target audience is if the medical board reacts harshly, I want
Hmm.
Dr. K's fans and lay people to have this.
Understand like why?
Yes. So,
Yeah.
like when Trump says, well, I didn't lose the election. To me,
Hmm.
Dr. K is exactly like Trump to me,
Hmm.
specifically with his relationship to his followers.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and if the medical board, I fucking guarantee you, if the medical board sanctions him in any way, Dr. K will turn to his fans and say, "Well, they just don't understand. They don't understand what we have." And when it's the same as a relationship to a groomer and a child. They're coming to say that we can't be together, but they don't know, do they? Only I understand you. I alone can fix it. That sort of like
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
just the idea that there's no safety net and no oversight.
Yeah. Um, I know what you mean in the comparison to like Trump. This was another critique that I had. I don't know if you caught it, but it feels like you will use now this may be, it probably is. I'm willing to bet it probably is. Like feels like morally justified comparisons when you talked, for instance, about the grooming. But for me, it feels very loaded, and that's something for me emotionally, at least, and somewhat logically, I'll admit, but not as much as I would like it to be. But emotionally, I personally am going to have a more fierce response when people do that because
Mm-hmm.
emotionally loading things. Like, I'm not sure if you caught it, but I had a recent conversation with somebody who was defending Dr. K, somebody from my chat room, and I tried my absolute best to avoid emotionally loading a lot of these things because I just have a very visceral reaction whenever people
Yeah, yeah,
like
but you did
use a
slip into it when you're like when you start talking about prostate exams and colonoscopies. It's like
yes.
you're saying that can cheapen your argument at the same time that it's
Yeah,
strengthening it.
yeah. It's just like for me, it's like I feel like I lose people when I do that. You know, like there's people in the middle that are like, I don't know, is this Dr. K guy really doing some cringe shit? And then when I say something like it's similar to that of a groomer, they're like, he's nothing like a groomer. Like this person is outlandish and wild. And that was going to be something that I was getting to with. I had a conversation with Chud Logic about your video, and it
Yeah.
was something me and him both agreed on, which was I thought was good is how hands off you were inside of this video because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people have a very like vitriol or like a perspective on you.
My face is the equivalent of a butthole analogy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I
Exactly.
understand.
You're on it. Yeah. And so your like more hands off approach there essentially nullifies the argument that he's like, oh, he's using all of these analogies and all of those analogies. You let the pros speak for you.
Right.
You do all the, not even speak for you, do all the talking, right? And
Yeah.
and I thought that was really good because that argument is gone. They can't use that argument against you anymore. Like um I thought that was really good. Me and Chud Logic talked about that, but anyway, yeah, that was to the effect about the grooming shit. But you were
But
talking
but
specific.
but
Good.
I really mean it in this case. Like
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, that's
not.
what mhm.
I know it's
Sorry.
sensationalized, but I literally think that he operates exactly like a child molester in the way that he um, normalizes things that are really weird,
Sure.
and then anybody who suggests that he shouldn't be doing that quietly discredits. And so if somebody very established, like yeah, this guy in the Oregon Board of Psychology, the vice chair of the Oregon Board of Psychology, comes in and is like clearly very confident in what he's saying. He's in charge of ethics in Oregon and is saying essentially, if you're doing these things, it's very unethical. Dr. K can just quietly say, well, he's not a gamer. You know? What does he
Yeah.
know? And like it's that specific thing. So, um, yeah, I get you're saying it's easily dismissible, but I also I feel torn about it because I don't want to stray away from it because I literally
Yeah,
think
you
it's
don't. I mean, yeah, obviously you don't want to stray away from something just because of optics. Like, if you
right.
feel like it's a solid point, like, yeah, there needs to. I would argue there needs to obviously be a balance between like what is optically palatable to the people you're trying to talk to, as well as like
Yeah,
what actually is the point you're trying to make.
yeah, that's
I
fair.
would just say that relationship that you were referring to, I feel like, is present in a lot of communities that people even can really reach out to, like in the Twitch sphere, for instance, where
Hmm.
there was. I'm not sure if this would work super well with your audience, but because of how new you are to Twitch, and I don't know what like how much of your audience is very embedded in Twitch, but it's very common for people on Twitch to have like a very cult like mentality of like, hey, I'm wrong about this, but I'm just not. I'm gonna say that I'm not wrong, and everybody who thinks that I'm wrong are X, Y, and Z. They're racists, bigots, or whatever, and then that's it. And then they just like push them to the side, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how it operates, even when there's damning evidence of
Yes.
the case. And I feel like
Right.
that's
And it's the same thing Trump said.
yeah,
Don't believe your eyes and your ears. Believe
exactly.
me. Yeah.
Exactly. And I feel like those examples could do well. For instance, with I'm not sure about your audience, but those examples I think would do better with my audience because it doesn't, like, I'm not saying that you are being, because I think a lot of the things that you say in regards to Dr. K are perfectly fine and justified. Like I said, and I'm sure, I'd hope that you would agree that a lot of my critique of your video is more optical than substance in nature. But
Yeah. The video, you're critiquing the video as a tool, whether it does what it's
yeah,
supposed to do. Yeah.
yeah, more than like the substance. Because I had the debate with the chat or whatever. I by and large agree. But the it's just the I just want to try our best to be able to make as perfect of a point as possible, especially like as early as possible, like the first time, because if sufficient people fuck it up at the beginning, it might never happen again because everyone is saying, "You remember that guy who made the YouTube video or whatever?" That like a good example was the Slush TV video. A lot of people thought that like it couldn't be done after that, right? It was like, oh well, whatever. Everybody who makes this critique is like bad faith. I heard that several times because of how heavy-handed with some of the things and in such weird ways that person was.
Yeah.
Um,
I think Slush
and
made my job a lot harder here.
yeah, yeah. So um, anyway, um, yeah, I wanted to avoid that from happening, but um, yeah, let me get a guess a little bit more into the critique that I had of your video. Yeah, you ready for
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, in the video, I felt like for what I personally wanted the target audience to be, which would be the people on the fence, um, or the people who just simply are completely ignorant and might just view the video. I felt like it didn't have the point by point, step by step analysis that or like hand holding that I would have liked.
Yeah. There's no
Um,
hand holding at all.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so I wanted it to be like very very definitive to show exactly what he was doing was wrong and why it was wrong and stuff like that. And I felt like the video didn't have it, so that's why, like, in your mind, with because you just agreed there wasn't hand holding in the video, what
Mm-hmm.
was the idea behind not holding somebody's hand that, in my opinion, from my point of view, felt like they needed their hand held? Why did you make the decision not to hold people's hands through that?
You can convince people of things that they don't actually believe with a good video. And my worry
They don't already believe, you mean?
that
Like, just to be
they
precise.
don't really that they're not convicted. Like Dr. K's video, for example, is a perfect example of what you're talking about. It's all hand holding, but no
Yep,
actual arguments. And I
sure.
think it was pretty effective with a a good chunk of his audience.
I would say
They
so.
seem to be pleased by it, right? But I would say it doesn't. It's those people are still probably swayable.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
I'd say so.
they're not where he wants them to be, right? He's scooped them back in, but they're probably still drifting out a little bit, and he's going to have to keep shoring that up. It doesn't really put down like a cement wall the way he wants it to. And I'm very afraid of doing that. This is a situation where I really don't want to use persuasiveness and calls to emotion, especially because if I can get like the kind of smarter or people who can read between the lines more or people who I guess are more educated about this or understand this more, if I can get those people on board first, I think then they can start drumming up the kind of noise that like no, this is right and this is more compelling. I also think that like if we go head to head and like who can convince the audience better with calls to emotion, they're already in love with him, and they already hate me, and so like that,
Hmm.
it just seems like it doesn't work. So I was really afraid of any hand holding, because if I say I'm keeping myself out of the video, I'm just going to be this authoritative voice just reading to you. That's it. That's all I'm doing. But then I
Hmm.
say, and then I'm also going to use that authoritative voice to start making kind of like points and arguments and tying things together for you. I think that that's almost worse than me just saying like, I fucking hate this guy. Let's destroy it. And this is a hit piece. My first thought was like, I'll just call it the Dr. K hit piece. Like, fuck it. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
a hit piece. Here's what I'm going to do. I'll swear in it. I'll be vulgar. I'll make absurd analogies. But by the end of it, you'll be like, yeah, he's kind of got a point. But yeah. So I just I wanted to stay super educational. I also think it's so much stronger if you make the connection yourself. And then if you don't, you're not convinced, that's fine. If you're not convinced if you're not convinced by my video, then I don't know that I can be the one to convince you. I think you would then need another Dr. K fan already, or somebody else, another streamer you like. If you need somebody you like to kind of hold your hand and walk you through it, like I hope somebody else will do that, but I don't think I can do it.
I mean, if you don't feel like you can do it, I mean, that's one specific thing. It's just from my perspective, I felt like, and right now it just sounds like it's a different strategy just altogether. You talked specifically about the educated people, and some of these educated people then being able to also be able to be like, yeah, you know what, this seems right, and then be able to uh stir the pot a bit and be like, hey, look, I was a Dr. K fan, or maybe I still am, and here's some of the arguments that this dude made, synthesized in a way that like other maybe less educated people who watched the video couldn't really synthesize. um then yeah, I mean, if that was your target audience, then sure. But um I was looking at it from the framework of the target audience being just either somebody who's like heard of Dr. K, watched him a couple times, knows who he is, or somebody that's like familiar with Dr. K, and stuff like that. I think it's very difficult to get fans over on your side, so I didn't really super care too much about that. But just like the normal everyday Andes, those people, I feel like the hand holding would have been helpful for them. But if that wasn't your goal, which it doesn't seem like it was your primary goal was to make a cohesive argument with as little avenues of attack from like, oh, he's bad faith, oh, he's just mad, oh, whatever, right?
Yeah, I really
Um,
don't want it to be cult of personality versus cult of personality, because then I'm
yeah.
just doing the same thing he's doing. And then I'm like, I can tell myself I'm doing it for a good cause, but I don't want to me the cult of personality shit should be kept out of a discussion about medical ethics and therapy ethics. I don't it just feels like wrong and weird. Um I yeah, I want to put this in the way so that when Dr. K um tries to sever the audience's connection or faith in experts, this is like laid down as a foundation to prevent him from doing that. I'm trying to prevent as much psychological damage to his own audience and to the profession as possible. That's kind of like my central goal here.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. I think it was a talk with like Dario or something that you had, and you were asked what your goal was, and it seemed like it was primarily to avoid. Um, from my interpretation was it was primarily to avoid psychology, or the practice of psychological medicine
Yeah.
as being like a laughing stock, and no longer like seen as legitimate. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, and that hurts people's mental health. I mean, it's ultimately I want to protect the population from Dr. K. So like, if people get fucking swindled into this fucked up view of what therapy is, or are off put by it, thinking that the therapy is somebody asking you about like getting raped as a child within 20 minutes of meeting you, um, I don't want him to do that. And like,
Hmm.
uh, yeah. He's just like squeezing all the money he can out of these people at the expense of their faith in psychology and ethics themselves.
Yeah, that was another thing that for me it felt like you jumped pretty hard into it. From my perspective, was the I'm not sure if you misspoke there, but based on what I've seen, I would have at a doubt at that. But it seems like you are very confident in the assertion that he's doing all of this for money, and that's the primary motive.
Not motive, but that it's
Okay.
happening.
Oh yeah, well certainly nobody could deny that for sure.
Just that
And I would,
I alone can help you. You can't talk to me, but you can buy my guide and you can go see my coaches at Healthy
mhm.
Gamer. I don't think he is like a nefarious person with like ill intent,
Oh
but
okay. I
um, yeah, I don't
genuinely
think he's
surprised to
trying to
hear that,
hurt people.
honestly.
Yeah, I think he thinks he is doing the right thing. I think he's insane, but I don't think he's evil.
Okay.
I don't think he's in the yeah, like all those moments, like he's not like he told Reckful that he's going to be there for him for 2 years, thinking, oh, like, oh, this is going to be great. When I pull the rug out from underneath him tomorrow, he's going to really lose his shit. Like, no, of course he's not doing that. He's just
By the way, was that the day after that he said that he couldn't? I,
the
I never figured out that timeline
well.
for.
I can get my document here. My understanding is session 4, when he told him he would love him for 2 years, was on the 23rd of January,
23rd of January.
and session 5 was on the 29th. So it was 6 days later that he had that
Sheesh.
they were back on stream, talking about a private conversation that had in between. So it was within 5 or 6 days.
And just to be clear, that's when he said that like that he had to pick whether or not he was to be like his therapist or his friend.
Um, he said, I'll tell you exactly what he said. You can talk to another human being about feelings, and you can explore things that are authentic and important to yourself, and that doesn't necessarily make you a therapist. And so we were also talking about the other options in terms of like, what are we? Are we like colleagues that stream on Twitch together? We'd sort of talked a little bit about, things like viewership and stuff like that. I raised some concerns about favoritism, so I want to try to treat people equally. And I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that if one person is coming on stream over and over again, are we doing a disservice to other people? So I think that too, for me, feels like it's closer to a doctor-patient relationship, which I think becomes really complicated if you're kind of working with someone week after week. And I think the other thing that we expressed is that like, so I want to be Reckful's friend, right? So, but if I'm your friend, then can I be your doctor? Do I want to be your doctor? Do I want to be your friend?
Yeah, that.
Yeah,
And then they get into that.
yeah,
Yeah, that was the yeah, that was the I think that was I think that was one of the dumbest moves by Dr. K was the promise that he made and then that other shit. I thought that was I don't know. I've talked at length at
yeah.
how I believe an average person even should
Yes.
be expected to
It,
not
it
do
is
that.
the intersection of the average person's emotional, like, bad reaction and ethical breaches. It's a moment
Yeah.
where it's a perfect illustration of, to somebody who doesn't understand, well, why, how could it harm somebody to not know if the practitioner is your friend or your doctor? And this fucking video is the answer. That live stream, it only has like 130,000 views,
Hmm.
which is weird to me because their first session has like 1.5 million.
Mm.
So like, not that many people have actually sat through and like watched that thing. But like, if you want a case study in why you need a doctor-patient relationship and what it could do psychologically to somebody if you don't, I feel like that's a great, like, it just plays out right in front of you.
Yeah, that's it almost feels like a caricature, like
It
a,
does.
a
Like,
literal
it feels like
like
a play. Like if you were
yeah,
making a educational video, where
yeah, a
where
PSA or something.
yeah, Reckful says, um, I like to get these things solved. I don't like to be in the tension. So I'm in the tension of, is he going to be my therapist or are we going to be friends? Because he said if he's my therapist, we can never travel together anywhere. like he's fucking dangling it in front, like he's trying to get out of this obligation so hard that he's like, well, if you let me off the hook here, maybe we could go to Europe together.
Yeah. It's just I don't yeah. I feel like we agree on that really heavy,
Yeah.
and I don't want to make this a full agree thing.
Okay.
Um, because but I feel like we agree on that
Sure.
pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So back to the target audience and the effect there. I feel like a lot of my critique and a lot of the stuff that I said, if you agree, if the things that you say to me are true, which I have no reason to believe that they are, with your intention of it and your motive behind it and your what you wanted it to do, I think it makes a lot of sense with what the actual product is. I just thought that the intention would have been something else.
I think I also want to make a video that you can send to professionals
Yeah.
and that they'll send to each other. I want this to spread like wildfire through med schools, through PhD programs. I want people to be a concise thing that kind of. I want it to fill in the gap because the gap is what Dr. K exploits. Like he's super exploiting this. Professionals don't know about Twitch, and Twitch people don't know about therapy ethics. And he's like a fucking fungus that can flourish in this like dark, wet place where there's no sunshine. And I want the video to be like something that everybody can watch and kind of like gather people together to have this conversation about. Let's talk about where the intersection of these things.
Okay. I had one thing that was super specific of a part of your the video.
The weeb dude?
Yes, you heard it. Yes.
I did.
Yeah. So what was the point of adding the weeb dude?
I wish I'd added a little more context around it because he was not joking. My sense is he's not joking. He's making it into a joke, but the sentiment is real. So for anybody who does not remember this part, Dr. K is saying, hey, thanks for coming on, but if they're saying goodbye, and he's saying, if you happen to know of a real weeb, then send him my way because we want like a real one, And he's like, oh, I hope the audience doesn't feel like they were jebaited. And he says, yeah, they were jebaited, man. You take care of yourself, you shower, you go to work, you're dating somebody, making some life changes, and the guy's like, yeah, he's like kind of laughing. But I wanted to show that Dr. K is interested in having people on his stream who need clinical treatment. It's it's framed as like a advertisement for coaching, and like I think it is more inappropriate and more telling that he is trying to have people who truly need psychiatric help on his stream, versus people like the titles are always like, oh, how do you deal with streamer burnout? And it's like, well, the answer is you tell Dr. K about how like your mother abused you. Like within 20 minutes, you're fucking talking about. Like I want to talk about confidence, and you're talking about like getting beaten while you're tied to a radiator or something. I just made that up. But there was a kid who I guess he came on to talk about CPTSD. I don't know if that's what his question was about. But somehow it always turns from some innocuous gamer-focused problem to some fucking horrifying childhood trauma. And so I just want to paint a picture of him as actively seeking out people who cannot hold down a job, are not showering, do not have relationships. The basic shit that you check off to know if somebody's functional, that he's specifically seeking out non-functional people.
So to that effect, I don't really think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. Seeking out people that have like problems like that to put on your stream, but in the way that you've categorized it with the weeb guy, if I take your word at face value, which I'm just gonna do, for the sake of this conversation at the very least.
Understood.
It is that there's a problem if he is like actively working with people and they're like either in a good spot or they're getting near a good spot, and then he's like, all right, fuck it, we got to get this person out. We need a train wreck. We need an absolute like train wreck. There's a problem there, but I don't really see a problem if he wants to just take if he wants to talk to people on stream who are um who don't have their shit together.
The problem is that he, um, in tandem with him using therapy tools to explore people's trauma, it sets up the dual relationship, or I guess dual goals, where he is not. It shows that he wants to show his audience something entertaining,
Yeah.
and you being non-functional and crying about how you want to kill yourself is entertaining. You getting advice about how to handle being a little awkward around girls is not entertaining. And it just shows that he has a incentive to kind of pop you open and spill out your trauma,
Oh,
not for your benefit.
I see. So you're saying that like um
It also
well we go ahead.
also just with the concept of informed consent, it shows that he is seeking out people who are so mentally ill and desperate that they may not be able to consent to what he is asking them to do. So like
Wait.
if I say like I'm going to have a talk show where only schizophrenic people call in and I argue with you about your delusions. That's pretty different from saying I'm going to have a talk show where people call in and like I happen to have one person who's schizophrenic. I think it just um, it shows that he is actively seeking out the mentally ill and infirm and to exploit.
So the exploit thing, I think there is, I think it's a little much for me to just say that he is just he's going out there with the exploit with at least what we've referred to, not necessarily with like all of the totality of the circumstances.
Okay.
But um, the the thing that I agree is the case when addressing that specific point is that there is a perverse incentive, which is if
Mm-hmm.
I can make this person cry as much as possible, I make the most money as possible, I get the most views as possible, and regardless of whether or not he actually does it, that perverse incentive exists, and that is a problem, right?
Yeah, I mean, a psychiatrist is trained to constantly monitor themselves, and they have to be supervised when they start out to make sure that they are not doing things just for their own entertainment. Like you're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
be fighting against that impulse in just yourself, even like
Mm-hmm.
steering the conversation towards areas that are just more interesting to you or more rewarding for you rather than for the benefit of the patient. So yeah, introducing thousands of people throwing money at you is like a fucking it's an ethical nightmare.
Yeah. Um. Okay. I feel like we're agreeing too much again.
Okay.
um. So, but the problem is right now where I sit with your video because so much of my critique, especially in my coverage, and as it exists right now, was baked off of an assumption of a target of audience and an effect that it seems like is not the case. That
Well,
either
maybe you disagree with the purpose of the video.
I don't think I do.
Oh.
I think it's just a different strategy. That simple. Um, if you want to make a video that targets people that are actually going to materially do something when it comes to
Yeah,
the ethics board and stuff like that, you
exactly.
would target those people. You wouldn't target the Normans and the normies. I mean, at best, you would probably get like some LSF threads and stuff, but for the most part, like even if you make a large fuss, I don't think very many streamers are going to care. Large streamers are going to care too much. I think it's really hard to get them to really be bought onto this without
Especially, I
some.
mean, yeah, it's so much of a risk, and he's so beloved that I think
Yeah.
that people. I mean, yeah, I mean, especially with Reckful, in a way,
Hmm.
professionally, Reckful's suicide makes this a lot easier to, I think, get some kind of sanctions or consequences. On the
It
social
could,
media
yeah.
side, it makes it a lot harder. because
Hmm.
people don't like talking about it, and they really don't like ascribing any blame.
Yeah, so that um maybe you're getting at one of the things that you heard me talk about you. I felt like you personally used quite a bit of language that I felt like was very heavy-handed
Yeah.
when you were referring to the culpability of Dr. K
Hmm.
towards rectal suicide, and my skepticism of like whether or the hard line that I would give for the culpability of Dr. K towards rectal's um, suicide was primarily baked off of the lack of information that we have when it comes to their private communications.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So does that how much does that factor into you that there is a lot of private communications and stuff like that that we just don't have?
I don't think it matters to me.
Really?
Yeah, because the question for me is not like drawing a through line through their entire relationship, ending with rectal suicide, is is not how I see the culpability.
Okay.
Um, uh, the way trauma and like abandonment and psychological injuries work is not like that. Like that's this one problem, big problem I had with Slash's video is he told him he would be reincarnated. He told him that
That was just unbelievable.
he
Yeah.
he told him that when his game is done, his life is done. He finished an early build of his game and then he killed himself. So that's a very superficial, like layperson's understanding of like psychological damage. And like, I mean, those are weird things to say. I don't disagree with Slush there. I just don't think. We don't know. You don't know why somebody does. So this is one thing that like suicide prevention experts will say is that it's it's a generally harmful thing for the public when you start oversimplifying suicide. And you start saying, "Oh, he did it because of this." You know,
Yeah.
like Heath Ledger went crazy writing about in his journal about how he's going to play the Joker, and then that made him start doing drugs, and then that made him die.
Yeah.
It's like that. We have no idea, and
Hmm.
so I'm not trying to take that kind of like simplified chain of events view. It's more Dr. K's job was to help him. He did not follow the ethical rules. He did things that are damaging to any patient, specifically damaging to a patient with borderline personality
Hmm.
disorder. And then the patient killed themselves months later. And so, for me, if we are ever going to hold any mental health professional responsible for the mental health of their patient after seeing them, this is a great case to do it. And so the counter arguments are like, well, Reckful was already suicidal, and he tried to kill himself. He didn't want therapy or whatever. That that sets a very high bar for me to say, okay, unless you were perfectly healthy and went to a psychiatrist, which nobody would ever do, and then the psychiatrist somehow got you from being perfectly healthy and adjusted and happy to killing yourself, then we can blame the psychiatrist. So there's a level of like um, I guess clarity that people seem to want in order to use the word culpable that I just don't think we'll ever get that in any case.
Sure.
So to me, it's just did you seriously fuck up? The answer is yes. And then the patient killed themselves, and the answer is yes there too. And then and then 3 days before Reckful killed himself, there is the issue of Dr. K agreeing to a plan where he is not hospitalized against his own will, which, according to Avi, is another. With the caveat, Avi said, if that indeed happened, that's another pretty serious fuck up. And
So yeah, I don't know much about that, so I would want to talk about that.
sure,
But
but it definitely adds
uh
to my I would still be using the word culpable anyway, even if that hadn't happened.
Sure. So, yeah, my whole so from my position when it comes to culpability, right? I hear your issues, and they're pretty well thought out in regards to um the statement that you made about, hey, what level of fucking somebody up are you looking for here
Mm-hmm.
before you say somebody is culpable? And that a lot of people's level of fucking somebody up is like pretty much, killing them themselves. Like it's
Right.
way too high,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and
Um,
then their understanding of how much it fucks somebody up to not have a clear doctor-patient relationship, and to tell somebody, I can't trust anybody else to love you, but I'm gonna love you, and then the next day and say, actually, I don't. And
mhm,
how much does that fuck somebody up?
right.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, so from my perspective, I can just imagine so many possibilities that could happen in those private conversations. Of course, they don't like undo the damage that happened in the public conversations, right? In the public information that we have, it doesn't undo any of that.
No.
But um, it's and maybe that's the disconnect here, is that you believe that the public conversations alone, even if there was, let's say, incredible like healing and like straight
Yeah.
up fucking magical shit happening in private, that
Because
that the shit in God.
if it's so fucking healing and magical, then why is he dead?
Well, I mean, I think you could reasonably say that he could have killed himself even if Dr. K did everything perfectly.
I know, but he didn't. So right,
Yes, yes.
so the only culp to me, it's like I was doing surgery on this person. They were in a life and death situation. Um, I was eating a lollipop and it fell out of my mouth into their body cavity. Uh, Maybe doing some damage, but I got it back out, and then the person dies, and you're like, how do you know that I didn't do a good job and they were going to die anyway? And it's like, that doesn't matter. The problem is that you fucked up. And like,
Yeah.
it's not to say that anything would have happened with or without Dr. K. Like, that's, I don't think that's how that kind of culpability works. If you're flying a plane and it crashes and you were drunk, then you got to be held accountable for that. If, what Who cares what would have happened if you were sober?
Um yeah, so I think that airplane analogy is a good one.
Okay.
So for me, from my perspective, I think it kind of does matter. In my opinion, um, I think that in the case of it being like the person being drunk, you shouldn't do that. You should never do that, right? And that's a really shitty thing to do. But or well, not really shitty. It's like it's fucking horrible. Uh, incredibly loaded emotional shit there.
Yeah.
Um, it's a very bad thing to do. But in this instance, in this case, I think that the the healing done in private and then the damage done in public, and I believe that the statement, I don't know. I believe the position that you're coming from is potentially pretty reasonable if you want to make the argument of culpability from the position that you are. But from the position that I'm sitting in, the culpability, I need to see more information, because I can just imagine a lot of things being done in private that would make like him be doing like a lot of things to the best of his ability, and none of those things, like I said though, makes up for some of the things he did in public. Like there's nothing that could be done in private that would justify saying I will not abandon you for 2 years and then, you know, fucking off in, was it, what'd you say, 6 days? There's no, there's nothing that can be said in private that can undo that. And if your line is that's all that's necessary for
Yeah.
some measure of culpability,
Sure.
then
Absolutely. And
yeah,
any abuse, it's abuse. It's psychological abuse, and it is persistent psychological abuse through all six
yeah,
sessions over a period of 2 months. And
yeah,
so you can't undo boundary violating abuse with being nice to the person in private afterward.
yeah, Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah,
Nothing
so
makes it
yeah,
up.
that's how I see it, and maybe there's a better way to communicate it that makes it
No,
clear that like I'm not saying Dr. K like drove him to kill himself,
yeah.
or that he could have been saved by somebody else. But it's
Essentially, if we're going to say anything that somebody did that could have possibly contributed to the situation getting worse, there is a reasonable position we can point to,
it
and
is
that's
I
that
would say
action.
it's undoubtable that Dr. K contributed to the situation getting worse at that moment for sure.
Oh, certainly.
But whether it's a
Certainly.
meaningful, yeah. So it's like I only pushed him a little closer to the edge. Like don't blame me. I also brought him back from the edge at other times too. It's like that's a kind of charitability that I don't think we can afford to offer a psychiatrist.
Right. So, like, I want to get into the possible disconnect here
Yeah.
because I feel like your position is more rooted in the, like, I think your position quite literally is airtight when we make the argument of culpability. My problem stems primarily from the colloquial use of culpability
I
because
mean, yeah.
when we use it colloquially, what is what is projected out into the world is like what you were referring to earlier, which is that his actions led to the suicide, and that
Right, right, right. Yeah,
without his right.
did you see Stardust call in when I was talking to Chud?
Fuck, I don't think I did. No.
She started like crying about a family member who killed themselves. And like it and like it became really clear that she thought that maybe I was saying that that's her fault.
Oh.
And it was like heartbreaking. And I feel like that's part of why this is so damaging and confusing to people, because I'm not saying Dr. K should be held accountable as Reckful's friend. I'm saying that he
Mhm.
was his psychiatrist, a therapist, and doctor. That's the level on which he's culpable. And it felt
Sure.
like Stardust had like internalized that as like maybe she's culpable for somebody she knew who died. And I feel like that's part of the defensiveness. It's like people want to blame themselves, or like people who knew him or were fans of his. It's like it feels like people think that I'm saying that like when somebody kills themselves, all this blame gets like shot out at everybody around them, and we all have to like defend ourselves. I mean, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that when you are a psychiatrist and you offer to help somebody who you know is suicidal, and then you do a bunch of fucking malpractice, then you are culpable and um, somewhat to blame for what happens to that person who you have invited into your care.
Sure. Yeah. My like I said, like previous, I think your position is logical. I think it meets logical merit.
Okay.
However, I believe that
The
like just
colloquial
the yeah,
misunderstanding.
just the invocation of people's emotional response
Yeah.
to it, I I I think this is just a difference where I just play more I play ball more with what people are going to feel when that is being said, and like how can I match my words with the invocation of what people are going to think I'm saying in that moment. And I feel like that the invocation of your words at that had a lot of implication that just couldn't be followed up with. But upon like just here talking to you, I mean it's good to hear your position on it. Yeah. Because I mean, if we are agreeing, if we are speaking, with the terms that we've laid out in regards to your argument, I agree with you.
Okay.
I
So
think
I
that
maybe need
it's an
to
agreeable
I
point.
maybe need to delineate better that I'm talking about specifically in his role and because of his role, not because of his actions. Because
Right?
of his
It's
actions
like
in that role. That
yeah,
that the extreme degree of responsibility that I think we should hold a mental health care professional to.
yeah. I think the most powerful thing that you said was about what makes somebody culpable, if not this, right? What what makes somebody culpable if not this?
right, because you're never going to see
Y- y-
no psychiatrist is going to say,
yeah,
"Hey, you should kill yourself." I mean,
exactly,
I'm not saying he's like
exactly.
a fucking psychopathic murderer. Um, yeah.
Yeah, there's like, if you really, yeah, I don't know, that I think that was the most powerful thing that you said in regards to the argument was like, what else does culpability look like if not like fucking up a lot in big ways that very reasonably could lead somebody to feel certain feelings that could be understandable for somebody who's suicidal to feel abandoned and
Hmm.
potentially more suicidal.
And potentially displace real care that he could have
Yeah,
gotten instead.
exactly. Yeah, and potentially displace real care. Right. And
Yeah.
all of those things, I think, result easily in the argument that you're talking about if you synthesize that. Yeah, I agree with that. Um, fuck, we're agreeing too much again. Um,
I mean, yeah,
shit.
I'm taking your feedback. I don't think we have to be debating. What's wrong with
Yeah,
agreeing?
no, no. I just the reason why I'm not a huge fan of agreeing
Yeah.
is because it feels like there's very little progress being made inside of conversations if we just agree and agree. If we
But you're changing how
um
I think about this,
yeah,
and
no,
probably how I talk about it. I would say that is.
yeah, when we're settling the like disputes or like criticisms that I've had of you and then we reach an agreement, that's
But
poggers.
then
You know, that's good.
you immediately get uncomfortable and want to move to the next one.
Yeah, because I want to resolve another disagreement,
Okay,
right?
I'm
Because
ready.
I
I'm ready.
because if we yeah, yeah.
Keep them coming,
And
baby.
so yeah. And yeah, that's my idea at least behind these conversations.
Okay.
So um then this is probably one of the other ones that I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay.
Is your confidence that the ethics board is going to revoke his license?
Yeah, I don't know why I think that.
You have no inclination as to why you think that?
I mean, every professional I have talked to personally is like, 5 alarm fire. This guy is fucked. Um, you've got more than enough here.
Really?
Yeah, but I guess the only person who I've talked to publicly with like any authority on this is Avi, and he said he thinks 20 to 30% chance they'll give him a reprimand. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how familiar and I don't know how much it is state to state. I know he's in New York,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't. I actually don't know. To me, also I think Avi is more speaking about like general medicine. So
Mm-hmm.
he may not understand how much more fucked up it is for a psychiatrist to do this, but maybe he does. I don't know. I feel like I'm right, but I don't know.
I
The
so
only, I guess the only example, like if you read the past, most of them are resolved privately with the physician just agreeing to hand over his license, so you don't get to find out what happened.
Okay.
But I don't know if you heard this story, but a guy got reprimanded because he gave a woman a boob job. She asked him on a date a couple months later, and he said no, that would not be appropriate. She then emailed him a non-sexual email with a picture of herself clothed, and he didn't respond to the email. And he got a reprimand on his license for not responding.
No shot, dude. You're lying,
No,
bro.
no.
No shot.
So like they're taking this shit pretty seriously. They were like, you're ethically bound to reply to her and say, don't send me any more emails like this.
Oh
But
shit,
because he
bro.
was passively willing to receive pictures of her, reprimand. And that's like publicly on his license forever. Anybody who sees that doctor now can look up this shit, and there's like documents explaining everything that happened. This is like permanent humiliating thing. So I got to imagine that if you're doing this with like over 100 people in public, I have to imagine he's going to be in some serious kind of trouble.
um, yeah. I mean, yeah, certainly. If you would have asked me that as a hypothetical instead of telling me it as like a statement,
Yeah, he'd be like,
I
absolutely not.
definitely would have. No, no, hell no. There's no shot. Like you're insane.
And he's not. And he
Um,
wasn't a mental health professional, which to me, I would assume worsens this. But I mean, I don't know. When I interviewed that guy, he was just like, yeah, all ethical complaints in Oregon go to me. And I was
mm,
like, okay, so if anybody complains about a therapist in Oregon, you you just decide what happens?
mhm.
Like that was so then that makes me think like I maybe it just depends on who sees the complaint and what kind of mood they're in because it doesn't.
If that is how it works, then yeah, possibly. I have no idea how it
I
works. Like
asked him a
zero
few probing
idea.
questions. I was like, I was like, so I was like, I don't want to lead you about Dr. K. So my question is, if somebody broke this rule, would that rise to the level of like a license revocation? And he was like, it depends. Like,
Mhm.
okay, like I guess I don't know. I couldn't. I was like, can you give me an idea of like the scale of like when something is? He was like, it really depends because like situations get really weird. So he was like, we had a therapist who was who had married their ex-client and was the therapist of their new spouse's ex-partner. And he was like, so he was like, people get into all kinds of fucking like, he didn't say fucking, but people get into all kinds of tangled up situations that really you have to just, um, look at individually. And then I let him off the hook. I was like, I see. You don't want to say this situation merits this punishment, and then have something similar come up, and then you're on video saying,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That would
So
make sense.
I assume he didn't want to limit his own authority by creating that precedence. But yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you think that like that 80% is coming from those cases that you know of where it's like, damn, they really came down on you hard
I think it's
for
probably
like
more
doing
it's
that?
probably more coming from doctors and therapists that I just know personally, being like, "What the
Like,
fuck
yeah.
is this?" Saying
Hmm.
things like, "I couldn't watch the video because it's too horrifying what he's doing. This man is a
So
monster. He needs to be
did you,
stopped." Like horrified responses.
were those actually the like some of the
Yeah.
words used?
Yes.
Holy shit. Did they now what video? I'm curious of this. What videos did you show them? Was it yours?
In order to get interviews for the Recful, in order to get interviews for Reckless, the documentary, I had clips of Recful and Dr. K, like a 20-minute, just like montage of disturbing moments. And so I
Mm.
would just email them to people and be like, "Hey, this guy is doing this. I'm making a video criticizing it. I want the video to be educational. Are you willing to appear in this video criticizing Dr. K, where I will ask you questions about therapy ethics and nothing specifically about Dr. K?" And they
Hmm.
and like, you know, 3 people said yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Um. Yeah. I mean, I guess we'll find out because from so my information, obviously, going into like why I don't think the ethics board will like be coming down on him super hard,
Hmm.
is not as professionally informed as
But
yours.
I don't know mine is either because I think when you're friends
Yeah.
with a professional, the like
Yeah.
obviously their view of whatever is warped and colored by my
Hmm.
emotional
What?
whatever. Like I think that's fair. So
Yeah. What I'm trying to essentially communicate is
yeah.
like it's just entirely a feels based. Like it just it would feel bizarre if this happened. It would feel like I don't know. I just don't feel like that would happen. It just doesn't feel like this happens for things like this. And what precedent would be set if this was the case? Like, what would be the precedent and why? And like, how would it? Like, it's difficult for me to imagine a ethics board trying to come to like, yes, this is against this and this and this
Hmm.
for this and this reason, and all of that. And a big component of that is going to be something that I kind of wanted to address with you, which is the modern or the more up to date
This pisses me
examples.
off. I hate this argument.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the precedent that is set if they don't revoke the license is you can do whatever you want with no research, no guardrails, no professional consultation, flagrantly break the rules, say on stream that you asked your lawyer if you should do this and he said no.
Mm-hmm.
He said that you could get sued if somebody you talk to commits suicide. And you don't, well, we don't find out about this until someone is dead. And that's when we give you like a light slap on the wrist. Like, no, if he had been called out before somebody died, and then they had said, "Whoa, you're going about this the wrong way. You put the brakes on here. You you're breaking all these rules, and you're trying to get around the ethics guidelines." But even Twitch aside, you're breaking all kinds of rules anyway.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in private, you are not allowed to tell your client, "I don't know if I'm your therapist or not." You're not allowed to say that to anybody ever.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that person dies, you're in pretty serious shit. And I think that you should be, and I think that is fine. I think they're sending a really dangerous message if they don't take his license away, that like you can just fucking experiment on people, and if the experiment goes bad and they die, then okay, now I guess you have to do something right now. That's not right.
So I think something that would be probably more agreeable, and I think would kind of would I think this would serve the conversation a little bit better. So like if the ethics board was looking at with the information, let's say that you've sent them that we've talked about in this discussion,
Yeah.
if they received that information like a week after Reckful's suicide,
Yeah.
I could see there being very serious repercussions. I could see that being the case.
The boob job story was apparently the complaint was filed in 2016, and they did not remove his license till 2021 or reprimand him until 2021.
Jesus.
So
maybe they are a little bit more retroactive.
They churn slow. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But
But take this with a grain, because this is my feeling, right? I'm just talking about my feeling.
also they're
right?
old people, you know?
They are, yeah.
Once you get to a certain age, 2020 is like yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, Corona time hits different, though. I feel like shit feels weird anyway.
True.
But, yeah, this is just my feeling,
Okay,
right?
okay,
Is that
okay.
it would be that I feel like it would have more of a chance to land and to hit with heavy repercussions. I feel like so far after the event, it just feels to me very much like there is, I don't know, it feels so much to me like there is arguments that can be made that the ethical issues that he and that me and you both agree on were taking place, have been attempted to be bridged and closed off a lot of the ethical issues.
I don't know if they think that way. I hope they don't, but
Right. And so I wanted to get into that.
Yeah, for sure I would say he is doing less. He is breaking fewer rules. I think he is still exploiting people. I think he is still doing therapy without a doctor-patient relationship, but he is clearly not getting so far in the weeds with people like he did with Reckful.
Right, and so this is where I think like an ethics board might conflict, or actually not conflict, but rather be at odds with like my personal ethics.
Yeah.
So but I understand that there needs to be what the ethics board would do in this situation. So essentially, now that we established my personal feeling about what they would do at the moment, now what they would do now, and I think to be ethical, they would have to reprimand him as if the event had happened yesterday, right? Because the whole point is not supposed to be, it's not their job to be like, this dude is rehabilitated, the problem is like gone. Even if he was rehabilitated and the problem isn't going to be an issue in the future. I don't view the job of an ethics board to be like, well, it's the like the statute of limitations or whatever. Like
Right.
it's really long ago. Fuck it, who really cares? I don't
Yeah.
feel like that should be their responsibility.
I don't know if they calculate your likelihood to re-offend or not.
Yeah, and
I don't know if that's part of their decision. I'm not
I
sure.
don't think it should be. Um,
I think,
honestly,
I think, I don't know.
but
I
for
think Dr. K has shown a flagrant disregard for the ethics here, in that he has stated himself he knows he's breaking the rule and he just doesn't care because he thinks that nobody else is going to do what he's doing, so he's going to do it anyway. But he's also not going to consult with anybody. And he says, you saw, he says we consult with all of our research, but he never actually comes out and says, no, I told people that I was going to be doing quasi-therapy with people on Twitch. These are the people I told, and this is what they said. It's all very vague and intentionally so. So,
mhm.
yeah, to me, if that is a factor, I still would hope that they would see what I see, which is that he doesn't give a fuck.
Sure. Um, what I was just saying to the effect was, is that for me personally,
Yeah.
all I really care about is the likelihood for you to do something bad again. That's all I really care about, right? I don't care so much about punishing people. The only punishment that I think is justified is one that ensures that you don't do what you did again,
Here's some
right?
what I said to Avi in our interview. He was arguing with me about this too, and I
Mm-hmm.
said, when you tell me that you're a doctor, I want that to mean something. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing I want it to mean is that you have never done this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um,
Doctor should mean you would not do this and you have not done this. If you have done something like this, just in the interest of protecting the population and protecting the profession and public faith and medical ethics, um, I feel like even just that is enough of a reason to take the license.
okay.
Do you see any
So f-
value there?
So I understand. No, I see value in that, but
Okay.
I think that the value in that, um, I think, so I disagree. But I see the value in what you're talking about. The value in preserving that integrity of what it means to be a doctor, and the reason I disagree is because, um, I think that, well, you can do something. Well, sorry, I there are moments where I agree that you should never be a doctor again. Like I think if you like
Sure.
have sex with one of your clients or whatever, you shouldn't be a doctor ever again. Um, but like for and I think me and you then would probably agree that you can wait, can you? Do we agree that if you get your license revoked, there can be in certain circumstances where you can get it back, or is it
Yeah,
if your license is
I think you can get it back
okay?
depending
So
on
then
what they slap you with.
Okay, so then we would probably just disagree maybe on the specifics in this specific case. So for me, in the Dr. K case, the way that I view it is he has shown uh, negligence at the very least when it comes to his online performance, but I had no reason to believe that his offline performance is his IRL performance is bad or dissatisfactory.
I think he
And
is. Go ahead.
I mean, if you want to say something, I'd love to hear it.
I think he's fucking insane. I think he's like legitimately a crazy person. That's all.
Can I hear why? I actually want to hear.
Yeah, I think he does not. I think he lacks empathy. I think he's using people. I think he doesn't care if he doesn't care who he hurts. Doesn't care how much he hurts them. I, I, I think he's like a dangerous liar. Like I think he's like 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 psycho. Like he freaks me out, and I don't. Um,
S- So earlier you said that you don't believe that he's doing any of this maliciously. Do you
no,
believe
no.
he's
I think
doing
he's a
this?
narcissist. Like I think he.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like Trump. I don't think Trump is trying to hurt people either. But
Uh-huh.
he's like if Trump were a therapist. So like,
Uh-huh.
I don't know how people feel about him as a president. I think he's a terrible president, but he'd be even fucking worse therapist.
Okay. Okay. Um, I understand what you're trying to say there.
Okay.
Um, what if you had information to show to you that his clients loved him?
of course they love him.
Like, well, I'm not talking about the streamers
I
specifically.
know
Oh, okay.
any victim of Dr. K is gonna love him because he configures himself as the person to be taken care of. That's why this blowback is like. That's why there's so much resistance about Dr. K. He recruits his fans to feel bad for him like he's a victim. I'm sure he does it to all of his clients too. I've never seen any single I've heard of a couple interviews where this happened, but very little pushback ever against Dr. K. I've never seen anybody get mad at him and him be able to deal with it. I've never seen him have open conflict with anyone. Like he fucking hides like a fucking cockroach. I I I I I don't think he's a good guy. I don't think he
Okay.
I think he wants to be a good guy and I think he has good intentions, but I think he is like an inherently um, like destructive person to people interpersonally.
Okay. Um, so my issue with what you said about his patients, if they all said that he was like great and excellent, it feels almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy then that there is no bit of information that you could be provided that his offline presence would be worth saving. Like, let's
No,
assume that
no, probably
there is
not.
no there is no bit of evidence
I
that
mean,
could
if there's a
possibly
if you get like a team of like for all Dr. K had to discount the idea of having experts speak on your behalf in response to my video,
mm-hmm.
right? Where are the MDs and PhDs coming out in defense of Dr. K? I've not seen one.
Mm-hmm.
I've not seen anyone with those credentials come out and say, "Oh, this was done well, and he is following ethical guidelines."
I mean, if I I mean, we could talk all day about how bad Dr. K's video was. I thought it was. I had so many things to say. You watched it, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had so
yeah.
many
Okay,
things to say.
so I guess what
Yeah.
would start to convince me is peer review,
Okay. So if
but not patient,
professionals,
not the patient.
yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
patient,
So if,
it's like asking kids if their parents abuse them.
hmm
If the kid says, "Yeah, my parents abuse me," that's a great sign that they do. But if they say, "No, I love my parents," that doesn't mean shit.
yeah, I 100, I understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
So if you were shown like multiple different um academic individuals looking at, let's say, then would that extend to your ethical complaints, or would that only extend to his offline performance? If
No, it would
multiple,
extend to his offline performance only because
Mhm.
my um, to me it's just plain as day. It's the thing you're wearing glasses. Wicked Supreme hates me, and Dr. K is breaking ethics rules to the point where he needs to get his license revoked. All these things are plain as day to me, and I don't know that anything can convince me otherwise.
yeah, okay, um, yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you, because I've ran through the thought of, if the ethics board comes through and says that, for instance, the reincarnation bit and all of, the things that we talked about is okay, I would just disagree. I think we can point to the reasons why that isn't okay, and I feel like I could fight that. And if I lose, I lose. But I feel like I could fight that. Um,
I'm more okay with the reincarnation thing.
really?
Yeah, so to me, that's him being a bad therapist and maybe like kind of sociopathic, um, and maybe even sadistic in a weird way, but it doesn't break any rules.
Oh, sure.
It's not like a fundamental thing. Like I could imagine seeing that snip and then talking to him and then I find out that he actually has this plan and justification for it that is like 4D chess that I didn't think of and maybe it would make sense. I don't know. Like
Well, that's
maybe
good to hear,
maybe there's a thing
actually.
where you're like he says, I found that with suicidal patients, if you actually kind of suck the air out of the decision and say like, I find that the guilt of having to live weighs heavily on suicidal people. It actually makes them more suicidal. So my technique is I say, you know what, you don't have to live if you don't want to. It's not a big deal. And then that kind of takes the weight off of the decision, and then we can kind of get into why. And then that's helped me. I've saved countless people through this technique. then I was like, okay, that maybe that's a therapy tech. It doesn't seem like that's what he's doing. It seems like he's just blurting out the first thing that pops into his fucking disorganized, insane brain. But maybe, that there is at least questions you could ask about, okay, why did you do that? And you could maybe justify it. Saying, I don't know if I want to be your doctor or your friend, there is never any excuse for that. So,
Sure. So,
yeah.
I mean, at the very least, it's good to hear that, because that kind of thing that you just said in regards to the reincarnation bit was kind of what I've been looking um, for a statement that you would make about something that you viewed like as there being a reasonable possible explanation for, um,
Hmm.
outside of, and maybe there was that. That's primarily what I think maybe I'm doing a little bit more often for a lot of the things that he's saying or that
Yeah,
other people
yeah.
say and
Some I
do.
have a red line about some of these things, but the things
Yeah.
that as far as like a therapy technique, like I think that's shitty therapy, but I don't think it's
Yeah.
automatic, like
Yeah.
punishment deserving.
Yeah, it's just good to hear that
Some
there's that.
vestige of sanity left in my brain.
Yes, exactly. Took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Um but the okay. So yeah, I think me and you agree then that there is some kind of that at some point like you would potentially just say even if the ethics board said this is okay, it doesn't really matter in regards to the moral conviction that some of us might have in regards to like whether it be right or wrong, and we can fight over that, and then until I'm provided sufficient information. And sufficient information for me is not just whether an ethics board says yes or no. I need a compelling argument for
Hmm.
why they said yes or
Hmm.
no.
Right. Yeah. I'm there. Yeah.
Okay, so there's that, but the offline participation, right? I think I can agree with you on the offline participation. Now, when in regards to that offline participation, let's say the ethics board says, Dr. K, no more online shit. Can't do that.
Hmm.
But we had an independent body audit your offline therapy sessions, and it shows thumbs up shit. Would you be okay with that ruling saying he can do private practice,
I probably wouldn't be. I
IRL?
wouldn't be happy, but I would not fight it.
Okay. Okay. I mean, yeah,
I don't. I don't. I
don't
actually. I don't.
expect it.
I don't know. I don't. I probably would fight it, but I wouldn't fight it that hard. I would. I would find. I would say, who do you fucking write a letter to appeal this? And I would write a letter to them. So I guess I
Why
wouldn't,
would you? Why would you fight it?
because I don't think he can be. I don't think he should be a doctor, and I don't think people should know that he's still a doctor. I think it needs to be publicly taken away from him, and the line needs to be drawn, and the front needs to be held. I guess I was just thinking about the damage he can do as a private doctor is greatly reduced, but there's still the damage to the like his fans of seeing that like he's not held accountable for this.
Right. So
So
then
I
I'm
would I
back
would fight it,
to.
but I wouldn't fight it nearly as hard as if he continues to be
Mhm,
a public figure.
mhm. So then I'm back to square one. Then, what
Yeah.
information would you need to see to convince you that he can do offline practice,
I
private
don't
practice?
know.
You don't know. Okay.
I think it would just make the pill go down a little easier if I saw some kind of peer review, but I don't know that I could actually swallow it all the
Okay.
way. Yeah.
Um, I mean, that's it for my major critiques that I can think of off the top of my head. If you can remember anything that I said that you can think of that.
I don't think so.
Okay. I mean, this is. I'm not sure if you were asked. I think you were, but how many hours do you think you've spent on this?
I don't know, like probably 100.
Honestly, that'd be it. No, no way. Only 100.
I edit pretty fast.
Maybe.
I edited the whole thing in like 3 days or something. The hard the long part is watching stuff and like
Oh, sorry. What I didn't mean just the video. I meant like the whole.
Oh,
Dr. K.
streaming about it and thinking about
Dr. K, thinking about it,
it.
typing
I
up
wake
the
up
stuff.
thinking about Dr. K and I go to sleep thinking about Dr. K.
He's in your walls, huh?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
living
I think about Dr.
rent-free.
K all the time.
Okay.
I think
alright.
it's a 24/7 thing until I've done everything I can, and then I'm just waiting to hear back.
Okay. All right. All right. At least, hey, listen. I respect the candid nature of you just admitting that he's got
Oh yeah.
he's got a rent-free experience.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's cool.
I assume he thinks about me a decent amount as well. So
Yeah, I definitely. Something that I thought was kind of weird. I'm not sure if this is something that you maybe I'm like ingested at the wrong time or misheard, or maybe you believed. I heard you say that you didn't think that the Dr. K video on ethics was very much about you. Did I hear that right?
I think I said it's not a response. What I meant is
Okay.
it is about me, but it is not an actual response to
I
anything
see.
I have
I
actually
see.
said. It
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
it doesn't
yeah.
connect to anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was trying to think of
agree
like,
with
should
that.
I respond? And I'm like, how do I respond if he's not responding to me? So I kind of decided on probably not, because there's no nothing.
Because I felt like a lot of that video was trying to like
Discredit me.
discredit you. And
Absolutely.
target
But like,
your-
I'm not gonna make a video trying to recredit myself. It just doesn't feel like.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like this is just a personal thing. I feel like that video from Dr. K can easily be used against him with the three major pillars that he laid out for,
Mhm.
I think it was mutual consent, diagnosis, and treatment.
Mhm.
I feel like, as you saw the discussion that I had with the person in my chat, I feel like those three pillars can just be used against him in an instant.
Absolutely.
And I genuinely feel like if I don't know, I feel like he blundered it, not only in that it's incoherent, that with any of the arguments anybody's making about him, but also that like if somebody actually wanted to make
A rebuttal.
a response, a rebuttal with that, it's just over.
I'm
like
hoping somebody else will do that.
Yeah. I'm not necessarily saying that.
I don't
like,
think it should be me.
Yeah, I think you doing it runs the risk of looking like, oh yeah, this guy's just obsessed and who really cares what he has to say.
And I am.
It's unfortunate. But...
It's unfortunate. I am obsessed, and maybe you shouldn't care what I have to say, but I don't need to make that obvious in my fucking.
You're
my
gonna
main
farm
channel.
giga chads, man. You can't keep saying that. You can't keep admitting to stuff like that. You're gonna farm giga chads. All right.
I'm a hate farmer and I'm a giga chad farmer.
There you go. All right. All right, buddy. Is there anything else you wanted to ask me?
I don't think so.
All right, brother. It's good to have fun. For a little bit of background for everybody, I'm not sure if you told everybody in your chat, but the reason, by and large part, this took so long is because I messaged a bot instead of Mr. Girl himself.
True. I did not know. Yeah, I didn't know that you messaged me. So then I heard you say on stream that I didn't message you back, and I was like, Oh, and I think I had messaged your. No. I think I didn't. I messaged you on Twitter after you said that. I was like, "What do you mean I didn't message you back, motherfucker?"
Is a whole confusing thing. Yeah, I messaged a bot. Pretty embarrassing stuff, and that's why this took so long.
He messaged the America's New Dad bot in my Discord.
Because the bot was playing
The Last of Us 2.
I know,
but he's been playing The Last of Us 2 for like a year now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I heard that you liked playing the multiplayer in that game.
I do.
Yeah, and so I was like, hey, there's a guy called America's New Dad that felt like it was your humor, right? As a picture of you, you're the type of person to have a picture of you, right? And then it was like playing The Last of Us 2, and I was like, that's him. Yeah, that's him. And I DM'd him, and it was a bot. I didn't know bots could play video games. So
this one can.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So anyway, well, I enjoyed it, brother.
Me too. Thank you for your time, and until next time.
Until next time, buddy. All right. Much love. See you.
Much love.